This week on The Record, ARPA funds under scrutiny in North St. Louis. Why tens of millions of dollars in federal funds are paused pending a closer look. The Illinois assault weapons ban goes to court. What the arguments could mean for the future of semi-automatic rifle sales in the land of Lincoln. Abortion and IVF in the spotlight. How a second push to protect IVF nationwide fell short. U.S. Senators Tammy Duckworth and Eric Schmidt are on the record. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. This week, the U.S. Senate failed to pass a bill that would have provided nationwide protections for IVF procedures. Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth sponsored that plan, but 44 Republicans voted it down. She's now on the record. Senator, thanks for joining us. We saw the floor debate. Well, there really wasn't much debate, just a quick vote. But look, a lot of people across the country, in Southern Illinois, in Missouri, they might look at video clips online, sound bites if they watch cable news, and they might see Senator Katie Britt, who's giving some sound bites saying that she was going to safeguard IVF. I don't know that everyone's going to read through the actual bills. I went through and looked at yours, looked at hers. Yours is 60 plus pages, hers is like 2 or 3. We know that states aren't actually outright banning IVF in the law books. They're just saying that a frozen embryo deserves the same rights as a live fetus growing in the womb. So when Senator Britt's bill says states are not allowed to ban IVF, why isn't that a workable solution here?
Because states are not banning IVF. States are saying that a fertilized egg is a human being. And if you do that, then it makes IVF not possible because part of IVF is actually discarding non-viable fertilized eggs. That is why I wrote this bill. You know, originally when I wrote this bill, it was about you have the right it required you to be able to access IVF state by state, that states could not criminalize you. And then I realized that what was happening in states was that they were not criminalizing the IVF procedure or banning the IVF procedure itself. They were getting around that by defining a fertilized egg as a human being, and that you were liable for manslaughter potentially for destroying those fertilized eggs. I mean, in Louisiana, you can't even discard fertilized eggs right now. In Louisiana, you have to just keep them forever. And by the way, who's going to pay for that? I have one fertilized egg. It costs $1,000 a year to preserve that egg. Is all these guys who support this, are they paying and helping families to pay for this? So that's why I wrote this bill, to have a statutory federal right to access IVF. And Katie Britt and all my Republican colleagues who talk about how they're going to preserve IVF and not allow states to ban it are basically throwing out red herrings for their constituents and misleading the American people, because fundamentally it's about this personhood movement that is happening in state after state after state. And that is happening thanks to Donald Trump, because as he said during the debate, he did a beautiful thing by sending it to the states. And now Americans have to face this patchwork of access or more importantly, lack of access.
When you put this bill together, I imagine you must have had input from hospital groups or from medical providers. Are you hearing from anyone in particular? Because Alabama went back and they changed course, right?
No, they did not. They did not. Their state Supreme Court ruled that a fertilized egg is an extrauterine child with the same rights as the woman who would carry it, and that you would be liable for manslaughter for destruction of that fertilized egg. And then their uproar happened because all the fertility clinics ceased treatment because doctors were immediately afraid that they could be charged with murder or manslaughter for discarding those fertilized eggs. So then they went back and very quickly passed legislation that's just simply said, we're not going to prosecute. And did not say that discarding fertilized eggs as part of IVF is not a crime. They simply said, we're not going to prosecute. And that is something that they can change under the next governor. They can change that under the next legislative session anytime that they want. So they never dealt with the fundamental issue that their Supreme Court said fertilized eggs are human beings, and if you destroy them, you are liable potentially for manslaughter and murder. All they said is that we're not going to prosecute as long as you do it as part of IVF.
You've mentioned Donald Trump a few times in your press conference this week during that floor vote Out on the campaign trail, Trump is now saying he wants insurance companies to cover the cost of IVF. Now, you may not believe he'll ever deliver on that promise, but do you agree with the premise, with the idea? I mean, this is typically an expensive, elective operation. Should insurance companies cover all the out-of-pocket cost for IVF?
It doesn't matter if you say that you're going, as Donald Trump has said, that he's going to tell insurance companies to cover it, if you're not allowed to have access to it. It's like saying insurance companies, you have to cover insurance for automobiles, but in the meantime, you ban Americans being able to buy automobiles. You make buying automobiles a crime, right? So what's the point of having insurance coverage for something you're not allowed to do?
I want to get your reaction to the recent reporting we saw from ProPublica this week that now identified two women who took an abortion pill, perhaps mifepristone, something similar, and then, due to some delay at the doctor's office or in the ER over some concern that maybe doctors couldn't initiate a procedure until it was too late, these two women died. One of them was a mother with a 6-year-old daughter who's now left behind without a mom. I just wonder, what do you think is at stake in either that swing state, Georgia, other states like Missouri here, where abortion is on the ballot this November?
It's devastating. Again, when politicians insert themselves into doctors' offices, into emergency rooms, and prevent doctors from following the best medical treatment available, providing the best medical treatment available, you end up with tragedies like what has happened here in these two particular cases. And it was really scary to me in particular because I had a miscarriage as part of my IVF journey. And part of that miscarriage required me having to have a DNC, the very same procedure that this woman was waiting for and ended up dying waiting for the procedure. I was lucky enough that being in Illinois, I was able to get my DNC following my miscarriage so that I could then immediately resume another cycle of IVF. But if I were not allowed to have access to a DNC, then I would have had to wait months and months for my body to maybe expel what was part of the remnants of my miscarriage, or get to a point where I could be where this woman was in Georgia, facing sepsis and other threats to my life. Luckily, I'm from a state where this is not an issue, and I was able to get the procedure I needed. But it is devastating that this happened, and this is on the hands of Donald Trump, and this is on the hands of Republicans who voted time and again to ban women's access to reproductive choice, who inserted themselves in those medical decisions where they don't belong.
And then quickly on the campaign trail, I want to ask you for your take. We saw Senator Mitch McConnell sort of dodge a question about this earlier this week. What's your take on this Haitian immigrant question that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance keep bringing up about pets being allegedly barbecued or harmed? What do you see in all the rhetoric there?
I see racism. This is what they're doing. This is racism, and these are racist statements that they're making. They're even suggesting that we should deport legal Haitian veterans, veterans who were here and served and serve our country honorably. This is great. This is the racism that comes up time again with the MAGA Republicans and that Donald Trump caters to over and over and over again. And it's simply not American.
Senator Duckworth, thanks for your time. An expanded version of that interview, plus our past interviews, all up online at ksdk.com. We'll be right back with Republican Senator Eric Schmidt. On Capitol Hill, 2 Republicans did vote for the Right to IVF Act. Both are women, Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. But that measure needed 60 votes and broader Republican support to pass. We turn now to one of the opponents. Senator Eric Schmidt is now on the record. We saw on the campaign trail this last few weeks that President Trump says he would force insurance companies to cover the cost of IVF. Just this week in the Senate, Senator Tammy Duckworth said her Right to IVF Act would have forced the largest health insurer in the nation, the federal government, to do that, to provide IVF starting there. Why did you vote against it?
Well, first of all, I support IVF. I know good friends that have gone through that process, and they deserve the respect to make sure it's protected. But here's the truth. It is protected. And so Chuck Schumer is trying to create an issue, and many people have taken the bait. And it's, I think it's really kind of disingenuous to scare people to think that IVF is at risk. It's not. It's not at risk. It's protected in Missouri. It's been protected in court cases. It's protected in law. And so I think, again, this is just an election year ploy. And Chuck Schumer, by the way, we have a looming government shutdown. The American people are struggling. We have 10 to 15 people here, 15 million people here illegally. We're not dealing with any of the issues that the American people are concerned about, real issues. IVF is important. It should be protected. It is protected. And by the way, I would also point out that you brought up insurance. Kamala Harris is on record for abolishing private health insurance. So you're not going to have any kind of protections for IVF if Kamala Harris gets in office because she wants to end private health insurance altogether.
I think you may be referring to a 2020 campaign discussion to push for universal health care, which is, of course, an entirely different ball of wax, certainly. But
Mark, she did say she wants to end private health insurance. She also said she was for reparations. She also said that she wants to defund the police. And so as much as she tries to spin it now because she knows how out of step her political positions have been because she's a dangerously liberal San Francisco politician who's running for president now, it doesn't change the fact that that were her position. So look, I've taken on insurance companies in my career. I fought for autism insurance reform. We got that mandate passed when I was in the state Senate. I'm not afraid to take them on. The truth is, though, this vote, Mark, didn't include any Republican ideas. And so in addition to IVF not really being at risk anywhere, certainly not in Missouri, there were other ideas. Senator Britt, Senator Scott had ideas to make sure we beefed up health savings accounts, to make sure that states, if they did somehow deny this, that they would be denied Medicaid funding. Those ideas were completely off the table, and Chuck Schumer just tried to ram this vote so that people like you would ask people like me, why did you vote against it? And that's why I'm explaining it to you.
well, let's get into those specifics then. I know if you put 100 lawyers in a room, you could get 100 different opinions. But one of those lawyers with some rather rare insight, a former Chief Justice on the Missouri State Supreme Court.
Are you referring to Michael Wolff?
Yes.
Michael Wolff was a Supreme Court justice. He is a political activist now. So Michael Wolff is not an objective legal observer. And Michael Wolff is now the go-to guy for the mainstream media when they want to get a contrary opinion. So Michael Wolff, let's just be clear. Michael Wolff is a political activist who is now called upon by journalists to give opinions that would be negative towards Republicans.
Well, I don't know that. I've never known that to be true. You're offering that here now. His point was that, like Alabama's former language on the law books, Missouri's language of fetal personhood could be construed by a court to confer the same rights to a frozen embryo on ice as a live baby in the womb. Do you think the state should treat a frozen embryo on ice the same as it would a live baby in the womb?
Yeah, that's a really disingenuous statement by Michael Wolff. He should know better. In 2016, the McQueen lawsuit, the Missouri Court of Appeals, ruled IVF was protected. The 2019 law, if you synthesize all of Missouri law together, and I think you know this, Mark, you asked Mary Elizabeth Coleman this in an interview sometime in the spring. The definition is, the actual definition is, a viable pregnancy being terminated, right? So it has to be a viable pregnancy, which is why IVF is protected, because it's not a viable pregnancy. So the law is really clear. I think any attempts, honestly, to try to confuse families who are, who really want to conceive a child and have a family is really sad. And so shame on Michael Wolff and the others who are trying to confuse families right now.
Let's go back to the campaign trail now. We've seen, and this is a question about credibility in campaigns. We've seen multiple independent reporters now go to Ohio, track down many of these unfounded rumors from J.D. Vance and former President Donald Trump in Springfield and Dayton and surrounding neighborhoods there. Is it responsible for a senator or for a candidate running for president to publicly repeat rumors or things that might have been called in on police blotter, maybe even put in a police report that they don't actually know are true?
Well, I think what's irresponsible, Mark, is the fact that the town of Springfield, Ohio had 40,000 residents. 20,000 immigrants were sent to that town in a very short period of time, straining resources, making hospital beds unavailable. There's real risk, communicable diseases are up, and no one actually cared about any of that until this issue came up. And I think that's really disturbing. And if you want to know why middle America and the forgotten men and women in this country support President Trump and J.D. Vance, and increasingly Republicans, you can look at the Teamster vote yesterday, their rank and file members support President Trump. It's because the coastal elites and the Democrats look down on them and they ignore their real concerns. And the real concern is that having 10 to 15 million people come here illegally, okay, and to have this sort of temporary status for the Haitians that have been moved into that community has caused a lot of issues. Crime is up. Communicable diseases are up in Springfield specifically. So I just think it's really sad that everybody's looking for a sort of gotcha thing and they ignore the real concerns of average everyday American.
I have to interject there. You've said that twice now, but a Wall Street Journal reporter who went to that town has actually cited the county health department there that says infectious diseases are down. So I don't know where the confusion is there, but it's not the case that disease is up.
That's not accurate. But I love, Mark, I would love for you to start fact-checking Kamala Harris. I would love for you to start fact-checking Democrats. I don't see as much of that. Listen, I respect you. You know, I'll come on here anytime, but the truth is the real theme here is that the American people have been ignored by this administration, and Kamala Harris is more of the same.
Tens of millions of dollars in federal pandemic funds now under review. Why struggling small business owners feel they got left behind as politically connected families got ahead. St. Louis is running out of time to spend federal pandemic cash, and it's running into trouble trying to rush that money out the door without putting it into the wrong hands. Several small business owners who applied for a share of that $37 million in grant funds, well, they say they feel left out, especially after seeing politically connected families get their share first. We followed paper trails to dead ends, vacant lots, wrong addresses, and one property so badly mislabeled, we later tied it back to former Alderman Jeffrey Boyd's campaign headquarters where he was working when he went to prison on federal corruption charges.
There's former politicians all throughout that list. There's former state reps, former mayors, board of aldermen, all on that list, and friends and family of those people. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth of so many people in our community. The public trust is gone in our leadership. It's gone because we don't believe you. We don't believe you're going to do what you say you're going to do with the fund. This sits at the mayor's footstep. She appoints the SLDC president. She appoints the board.
After these press reports, those funds are now on hold pending further review. The city is hiring consultants to go out and do these site visits to confirm businesses who claimed the money actually exist and qualify for it. The court case challenging Illinois' assault weapons ban is now in the hands of a federal judge. The plaintiffs in that case claiming the ban violates the Second Amendment, while the state says the banned weapons are meant for military use and should be regulated. The case lasted 4 days and the federal Southern District Court of Illinois could wind up before the U.S. Supreme Court. If you pay attention to politics, even remotely, and if you're watching this show, then I'm willing to bet you do, then by now you've probably already seen the scary viral videos and outlandish claims that can't actually be verified by anyone responsible, like Venezuelan gangs overrunning entire apartment complexes in Colorado or Chicago, or Haitian migrants cannibalizing neighborhood family pets in Ohio. It's all bogus, and reporters who followed each of those leads found dead ends, confusion, retractions, even apologies from people who misjudged their neighbors. But this whole episode in modern politics reads an awful lot like a page ripped from the political playbook of the past. So let's check the record. This time we turn to the American newspaper pages from the 1850s. It turns out Americans were growing wise at the time to the Know-Nothing Party. Now, its members preferred the moniker they chose, the National American Party. The whole goal was to spook voters that too many immigrants might rush in and outnumber them at the polls. Let's look at March 15, 1855. The Democrat and Sentinel in Pennsylvania publishes an open letter about how foreign immigration awakened an unusual degree of interest throughout the country and much alarm in some quarters. The author there warns against ignoring or merely scoffing at the rising popularity of these know-nothings and starts to persuade the public, don't fall for the appearance of a movement just because it looks big. Crowd sizes, anyone? The author there cautions against what we now have come to call this replacement theory concern, warning against the temptation to take the bait from these know-nothings and fall into the, quote, frenzy, believing you'll be left in a minority. The scorn for the know-nothings stretches back farther to 1854 in the pages of the Daily Evening Star in D.C. Quote, the Know-Nothing Party signifies a short career and a ridiculous end. Men cannot overturn governments in these days by a joke. Politics is too serious to be managed by partisans with painted faces and silly catchwords. Sound familiar? April 3rd, 1854, the Daily Dispatch in Richmond, Virginia scolds the war upon the Irish. It says, we know nothing of the creed to which these know-nothings belong. We rather think that as they know nothing, they believe nothing. And then this in 1855, an article refuting a falsehood by the Record. Hey, I like that name. It's the principle of intolerance here, which, if suffered to proceed, will shake this union to its center and fill the land with discord and violence. That ominous prediction proved prophetic. Bigger problems loomed on the horizon. The Know-Nothing Party would soon stall, splinter, and vanish into obscurity. Some 150,000 of those Irish immigrants would enlist in the Union Army, and an estimated 40,000 of them died fighting for this country. By the way, today, tens of thousands of immigrants and naturalized American citizens serve in our armed forces. So next time you hear a politician fighting to keep them out, ask yourself how many of them are willing to fight to keep you free. That's all of our time. We'll see you at the same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.